Today's lesson was on Sikh marriage, and it was embedded within a scheme of work which Year 8 had been doing on Sikhism in general. The objective was for pupils to assess each other's work and make comments on how they could have improved their own work. Okay, so you've been completing an assessment on Sikh marriage. Who can tell us what the first question within that assessment was?
Identify and explain what happens during a marriage ceremony.
Thank you. So what would make a really good answer for that particular question?
If you identify what happens during a ceremony and explain using more than one source. The symbolism and religious importance explaining as well. You have to see different points of view and what happens in different ceremonies.
Okay, so you have to identify that not all Sikh ceremonies are the same. Excellent, well done. Who can tell us what question number 2 was?
How does a Sikh wedding compare to a Christian wedding?
What would make a level 4 answer for that particular question?
You just identify the similarities and differences.
How might you have done that simply?
You just compare two sources with different information in them and don't put much explanation in it.
Okay, so what would you do at the very top level?
You identify the similarities and differences and explain them more. You'd use more than one source and you'd do a conclusion at the end.
So you might include a different range of opinions within your conclusion?
Yeah.
Excellent. Now if you focus onto the board, there are 2 aims to today's lesson. To peer assess each other's work in groups and to use the skills that you've practiced when you peer assess to set your own RE targets for your next assessment opportunity. What do we mean by the term peer assess?
That we assess it ourselves in groups.
Against what?
Against the mark scheme on the sheet.
Excellent. So let's have a look at that mark scheme in just a little bit more detail. Who can pick out the key to success?
You have to identify and explain thoroughly to give them a level 6.
Does that simply mean you write more?
No, it just means that they've gone into it in more detail.
You have to make sure that the person's explained the symbolism of what's happening, and so they aren't just saying what has been happening. They're saying why and what religious importance it has.
Top answer, excellent. You have to make sure that the work that you're reading identifies symbolism and begins to tackle the why question. So what you're going to do now is you're going to peer assess each other's work in the groups that you're in. Off you go.
When pupils join us in Year 7, they're used to working together in groups. And what we aim to do is to encourage them to talk about the work and use criteria from a very early stage. At first it is difficult, but what we've found is if you narrow down the focus to 1 or 2 specific factors which may lead to a judgment about a piece of work, they very quickly pick up the threads of the system. And within a year, many pupils can become quite sophisticated at using assessment frameworks.
So you've made a judgment about this piece of work. So what is it then?
It's a 5+.
You think it's a 5+? Can people tell me why?
Well, I've explained it fully, but I haven't got any religious importance and why they do it for the reasons that God has said.
Okay, so there are elements of that that are missing. Why else is it a 5 and not a 6?
It doesn't show whether it's doing more than showing that he's used more than one source.
But it's still quite a thorough account.
So it's thorough, but what hasn't he explained
I
then?
believe he needs to expand on certain points, explaining them more thoroughly, and their religious importance and their symbolism.
Could you give me an example of where he could have expanded a point?
there is a short hymn and a prayer, then there is a brief speech explaining the significance of the marriage.
So what may you have added to that?
He says about the religious significance of the marriage, but he doesn't actually explain what that significance is.
You could have actually put an extract from the prayer as well, saying what it's about.
Yeah, that would show like we used two
Sources, yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
I could have expanded on the vowels as well, like what the vowels mean and why, like what they say.
So by just making those few extra points, we would have moved this piece of work on. So what do you think you're going to do next time?
Just explain it more fully and sort of do more symbolism and the religious importance. Evidence that you've used more than one source.
Okay, so you're going to perhaps use more than one source to expand upon the religious significance of certain actions. Mm-hmm. Good, well done.
It's got a few symbolisms.
There's only just like a few limited sources, one or two.
Yeah.
And explain some things in detail, but others are just skipped over.
Yeah. To get a level 6, you should have explained a lot
why,
more.
Yeah.
A wider variety of the things.
It's a thorough account of the ceremony, though, isn't it?
So it's definitely a 5, not a 4.
Yeah.
But
It couldn't have been a 4.
It's more just. I don't know. You needed to do more explanation. First of all.
Definitely needed to do more explanation. You've done a thorough account, but you haven't done some of the minor things that happen and why they do all these little things in it.
And some of the minor things are also very important.
Yeah.
They just
Very
don't seem it.
important, no.
And also at the beginning of the ceremony, I didn't write what they did, like taking their shoes off and covering their heads and things like that.
Yeah.
So how would he get better? How would he get a better mark?
Just explain.
Explain it, yeah.
Explain all the add more of the minor details
With
because
the
you've only
religious
got the
importance.
main details in there.
Right then, Sam, how did you get to this point with your answer?
Right, I first got this book and I bullet pointed all the things I thought were important from it. And then I wrote down the first bit and I went through the book again and got some more detail. I wrote that down. When I finished this bit, I went through and corrected it all and made sure I didn't have like spelling mistakes and things that I got wrong out of the book.
Did you do anything else?
Well, I had to look at like some different books to make sure they both like matched up the same sort of things.
So you compared different sources?
Yeah.
Right, so now we've assessed your work. Who met their target, the target that they'd set themselves? A good few people, excellent. Who went beyond what they set themselves? Can you explain why?
My target was a 5+, but I obtained a level 6 because I used religious explanations and I explained the symbols and included a lot of detail.
That's well done. What we're going to do now, to begin with, is review your own learning. So you have to put in your mark that you obtained for that piece of work, and then you're going to compare it to your target level that you set for yourself, and then you make a comment about your result. Rob, what would your comment be, given that you went beyond the target you set yourself?
That I put more explanation and used good religious sources and I did better than I thought I could.
Well done. And then you've got to try and work out, for this box, how could you have improved your work? But there might be a problem or an issue. Sarah, when we talked about it, you said that you thought the person that had assessed your work had got it slightly wrong. What do you need to do if you want to prove your case?
I need to find evidence in my work that backs up what the criteria was that was set on the sheet.
Okay, that backs up that you met the criteria at the higher level on the sheet?
Yeah.
Okay, and if you can do that, then we can change your overall mark. So you have 5 minutes now to look at your own work and reflect upon how you could have improved it. Off you go. We actually use different styles of assessment with different groups. For example, with lower ability groups, we may use more visual forms of assessment. So let's have some volunteers to read out what they've written about their own learning.
Alright, back up reasoning with evidence. Maybe use the internet or out of school sources and give my own opinions and others as well.
Good. Anybody else?
To put in other people's opinions, because I didn't do that much, because I find it hard to think of from their point of view.
So having an even argument, a balanced approach. Good. Anybody else who's got some comments they've written down?
I've got explain religious issues in more depth and using facts to back up my reasoning, like using the current divorce rate or something like that.
To use the current divorce rate to back up some of your arguments. That's a really smart target. Well done. How would you actually use the reflections that you've made to set targets for the future?
You consider all the points that you made on this assessment, so you can look back on it from time to time, so you get it all right next time.
Excellent, well done.